There are a lot of reviews out there for you Ultra Magnus fans for the Citizen Stack third-party Ultra Magnus or the Hyper Magnum Masterpiece Ultra Magnus. But I haven't really seen much putting these two side by side together and comparing the two. So if you're like me and you like researching your Ultra Magnus purchases or any Transformers purchases before you actually go out and buy them, this might help you. But if you're really like me and you would want an Ultra Magnus figure regardless of how it stacks up against other figures, as long as it's a different figure, then you can go ahead and skip this video. But today, we are going to see how Citizen Stack and Hyper Magnum stack up against each other. Alright, so on the left is KFC Citizen Stack, and on the right is THF Hyper Magnum. Now, one of them is pretty much an original, and it came first. That would be the left one, the one on the left rather, and that's KFC Citizen Stack. It came out when as far as I know, when Hasbro and Takara essentially just made a masterpiece figure of Ultra Magnus, which was a white Optimus Prime. So they were like, okay, so let's just go ahead and make an Ultra Magnus in an armored up version. But as far as my research goes, as soon as they announced it or it came out, Takara then also announced that they were coming out with their own Ultra Magnus figure. Now the funny thing is, both of these Ultra Magnuses are standalone Ultra Magnuses. Neither of them are actual armor bits, just like the G1 toy. So these both have cabs that transform into themselves to become the robot. So it's a one and done transformation. It's not like a white Optimus Prime for either of these guys, and you put armor on them and they become this armored up version. That's not the case for either of them. They were both kind of looking at the same idea. Now, you will notice that both of them are pretty much following the general rules for what Ultra Magnus should look like. You have the tall stacks on the helmet, you have the stacks on the shoulders, you have the missiles on each side. Let me fix this up for you. Okay. You have the one gun, just like in the G1 toy, but I'll talk about something else later that's included with one of them. And then you have the armor-like pieces as well. Now, in terms of size, obviously, Citizen Stack is much, much bigger than the Masterpiece Ultra Magnus. By the way, this is Masterpiece Ultra Magnus essentially, but with some improvements made by the third-party company Toy House Factory. So every now and then you're gonna hear me refer to it as Masterpiece Magnus. My apologies if some of you are thrown off by that, but essentially it's pretty much the same thing with slight differences. In terms of scale, both of them are essentially supposed to be Ultra Magnus. Although a lot of folks say that they prefer the Masterpiece or the Hyper Magnum version because it scales better with Optimus Prime and everybody else. But if you're going for size and as a display piece, the massive KFC figure will do just fine. Both of them are amazing in their own right and deserve a place in your display shelf. As for the design, obviously the Hyper Magnum, or the Masterpiece one, is going for a more G1 design. And as you can see, everything is G1-esque in terms of the cartoon, actually. You'll notice that it's more of the cartoon version rather than the toy. You don't see a V section here, which is blue, but here you do. This one is kind of going for the more toy vibe. Actually, the entirety of this is going for the more toy vibe, but with the cartoon colors. It is not cyan like the original G1 toy. Both of them are going for a royal blue, although they're kind of different. So in terms of design, I would say this one, it's an acquired taste. There is such a thing as over-designed, and this might be it for some folks. Ultra Magnus tends to be blocky in places in most of its incarnations, but I can see a lot of you enjoying this look. But you will notice that unlike the Masterpiece or Hyper Magnum Ultra Magnus, which has a lot of solid colors, this one has a lot of detail. Now if you're into that, that would be great for you. I mean, even the shoulders have white. You have a lot of red spots everywhere. White, red spot, red all over. While the Masterpiece or the Hyper Magnum one has just solid color blocks. So you can see if I lift this guy's arms up, so you see a little more red and silver there, but in this guy's case, just the red is just there as part of the inner structure. In terms of articulation, they both kind of sport the same amount of articulation. This one is on a ball joint, but not too much on looking down. Same with this guy. Actually, I would say that this guy has a little more articulation on the head. As you can see, he can look all the way up. This guy can't. But for the rest of the head, pretty much the same level of articulation. Okay, so up and down, side to side on the arms, up and down, little bit ratcheted side to side on the arms. So for the waist, as you can see, he has waist articulation. Okay, this guy, not so much, no waist articulation. Okay, but does this guy have hip articulation? Yes, he does. Hip can move front, back, little bit, yes, a lot to the side actually. And same for this guy, except there's a skirt piece that's kind of covering. Okay, so yeah, he can make a reasonable amount of movement. Alright, now about the feet, this guy has ankle rockers, but to a limited degree. This guy has strange heel boot feet. Both of them on ball joints. Both sides rather on ball joints. So that's basically 4 joints. So in terms of the hands, so obviously there's wrist articulation for both, but at the same time, you can move. The pointer finger can move, and then the rest of the fingers move together. They're one piece. In terms of this guy, it's all fingers separately. Okay, so if you wanted to do some interesting stuff there, you totally can. Speaking of articulation, anything that's added would be here. Okay, so it has articulated missiles as well. For this guy rather, the Hyper Magnum has articulated missiles. He does too, and they even jut out. My only problem is that in some copies, it's very loose. So you might want to fix it with super glue or pledge or nail polish, whatever works for you. In this guy's case, the articulation is this way. Although I don't know why you'd want to do this, but you can do it if you wanted to. So this guy can go sideways. This one can, but you have to lift it up first. Again, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but okay. Another interesting fact is that this guy, you cannot have this side of the arm facing outward. But in this guy's case, you can, because of the wrist articulation. So you can go either way. You can display him like this, you can display him like this, that's fine. Okay, in this guy's case, it's only one direction, where the long end of the arm guard is in the back. So let's talk a little bit of the accessories that they include. I would say that these rockets are considered accessories because they're removable. In fact, they're also very loose in some places. So these came separate and you just have to attach and reattach them. unlike this guy. So this guy has detachable missiles, yes, but they don't fire. But technically speaking, I don't know if you'd count those as accessories because they're packed in like that. Now, in terms of other accessories, he has one gun. One gun with an articulation point. The handle can flip backwards. For this guy, the handle can flip forwards. And this thing can open as well. There's a reason for those things having articulation points. We'll find out why. But there is something special about this gun. This has a 5mm port here on the end, which means if you have any effects parts that are 5mm compatible, you can just insert them like so, and there you go. So you have... Emgo refers to this as bloosh, which I like. Can remove that. Works with most Siege and Earthrise bloosh effects. I don't know if I'd also consider these accessories, but they do come as pack-ins with Hyper Magnum and Masterpiece. They both have Spike and Daniel figures. You can see there. And they are in scale. They are in scale to Hyper Magnum. They do stand. They have minimal articulation. Both of these have swivel arms, no head rotation, and then hip and knee articulation. This is essentially to facilitate being seated inside the cab. That's all it is, really. And also, as far as accessories go, this has one more extra. If you lift the Hyper Magnum chest, he has a matrix of leadership right there. The Hyper Magnum's matrix is dead looking, which I like. It's not crystalline blue because it's not working for him. The Masterpiece version does not have this, as far as I know. You could correct me if I'm wrong. The KFC version does not have it either, but he does have the storage for it. So you can open up this cabinet piece. So if you have an Optimus Prime with a matrix, you can insert the matrix of leadership right there. There. So I just gave it to an entirely different figure. They both have some level of paint when you lift up the chest windshields. They have some level of paint detail. This is entirely gunmetal, and this one is a weird little cupboard with a white frame and a silver backboard. Okay, as you can see, this looks a little more like the G1, and this one looks a little more like the cartoon. As far as the head sculpt goes, both are very, very Ultra Magnus, I would say. It's a matter of preference. This one's a little younger, this one's a little more battle-worn and commanding. You know, either of which really scream Ultra Magnus to me. Oh, speaking of screaming, he has extra faces. This guy does not. Okay, so in alt mode, they essentially both scale well with each other. I don't have the Optimus Prime MP10 and MP44, but they do also scale well with Optimus Prime, and you can use both as car carriers as intended for basically all your Masterpiece cars. Going by the length, they're almost the same, but I would say that the Hyper Magnum or Masterpiece is slightly longer by like less than an inch. In terms of transformation, I prefer the Citizen Stack figure because it's pretty much out of the box in the sense that you can easily transform him without having to worry. I just realized that I did not flip up the smokestack, so I'm gonna do that now. Okay, so they both have smokestacks, don't worry about that. I know a lot of you guys don't like your trucks not having smokestacks. There, he does have smokestacks. And okay, so in terms of the alt modes, They both work great. They both look great. But again, it depends. If you like your Ultra Magnus very detailed with a lot of red spots, red and gold and silver everywhere, then this one is for you. But if you'd like your Ultra Magnus to be a little more, solid colors, then this one would be your Ultra Magnus, I would say. Okay, so as you can see, solid colors all around. Now, in terms of a third mode, this one does not come off. The cap does not come off, but Ultra Magnus's Hyper Magnum's cap can come off. There's a little tab right there that you can press, and you can have it come right off, as you can see. So it can separate. Although it's a little really flat. Not like your Optimus Prime figures. You just slap him back on. No worries there. Okay. So in terms of gun storage, both of them have gun storage in the middle of the top pillars, whatever those are called. Both of them have clear windshields. Both of them have chrome grills, but this one has an extra front grill in front. It is removable, but I don't want to remove it. Number one, because it looks different. And number two, because I've seen some folks break theirs and I don't want to do that. Okay, so this one has blue windshields, kind of like the Generations. Not the Generations, but the Junior toy. This one has almost yellowish black windshields, which kind of remind me of the G1 toy. In terms of the missile launchers, let's call them missile launchers even though they don't actually launch missiles. This one gives you pivots, and you can actually move this around. Okay, so if you wanted to have them off to the side, you can. Okay, so that's an option for you. Same thing with this, except just plugging it on as prescribed, it kind of gets in the way of the smokestack, and they're a little low. What other guys do is, like in the instructions, they flip this up, and that's what they plug on to the peg hole. The problem on mine is that both of them are very loose, so that's not something I can do at the moment. Not without easily. Okay, they're not caught, but they're very easy to remove. These don't come off. The missiles do, but not the launchers. Okay, so I'm gonna put them back here where they're secure and they won't fall off. Okay, in terms of transformation, again, going back, the reason why I don't prefer this over this is because this one, every now and then you'll forget certain steps. They're not as intuitive. This one, you can easily do it right out of the box, or whenever you feel like it, you can easily transform him from Ultra Magnus bot mode to alt mode and back again. This one requires a little bit of finagling, is that the right word? Tinkering around with. If you forget a couple of steps, you might need a manual, or you're gonna need to take a lot of time to really decipher what's going on there. I do want to note that my KFC version, for some reason, is missing a couple of rubber wheels. Now, okay, so I did say that the transformation on the KFC Citizen Stack is better, but in terms of the actual stability of the toy, I feel like this is better. See, I can literally lift this whole thing, no problem. Although technically I'm the kind of guy who is okay with having the trailer and the cab separate. but you know, that whole thing just is easy to transport and hold. So this one, as you can see, just literally flops. And also the pieces, they don't really secure that well, I think. They can come off fairly easy. Not as well as the Masterpiece or the Toy House Factory version. But you know, it holds fairly well together. But see, it just, this part just came off. Like 1 or 2 things will come off whenever you're handling it. I mean, it's the same for this Ultra Magnus. I guess it's the same for a lot of Masterpiece figures because of the size. They tend to not handle as well as smaller figures. Like when you lift them or whatever, they're gonna start to drop stuff. Oh, interesting note. This has solid side mirror pieces and wipers, but these are articulated on the Toy House Factory and the Masterpiece version. Also, you can have your Daniel and Spike figures right inside here. No problem, you can do that. I'm not gonna do that now because it's gonna take some time. It does not involve you opening one of the doors on the side because there are no doors that will open on the side. You do have to open this whole assembly for you to be able to do that, but you can store both of them, no problem. And another additional accessory I forgot to mention is this gun for this guy. So you get an additional big friggin' gun for Ultra Magnus. I don't really use it that much because again, it's overly detailed. I like solid colors on my Ultra Magnus stuff. So anyway, which one will I recommend? The thing is, I'm not the right person to ask because anything Ultra Magnus, as long as it's different enough and as long as they make enough sense and they look good, I will get them. So it's really up to you, whatever you want to decide. Both of these are Masterpiece scale figures, and if you can chase one or the other, go ahead and do it. And one thing that I did not mention earlier is that the Toy House Factory version is actually an improved version of the Masterpiece figure. It it fixed a butt flap issue. So that's something that you can see in Toy House Factory Hyper Magnum reviews that other guys have done. But if you want me to do a little more with these guys, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to do a retrospective on one or the other, or even both. If there's something that you feel like not a lot of folks have covered, I can go ahead and do that for you. Again, I'm a big Ultra Magnus fan and I'm very happy with both of these purchases. They're huge and both of them are impressive additions to my collection. Follow me at x_Paco on Twitter and Instagram, where I post a lot of my Transformers photos. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for more notifications on when I upload toy-related videos. Till next time, this has been X's Toy Universe.